Welcome to The Good, The Bad, and the Sequel Q&A. My name's Doug. So the next sequel that we're going to be covering, we're going back into horror. And this is one I've never seen before, and Jamie hasn't either. So that's always fun when we stumble upon these. It's going to be Blair Witch 2016. It is a direct sequel to the Blair Witch Project. And what's really cool is this week's guest is camera operator, cinematographer, director, Nathan Haugaard. That is like a pinnacle movie in his young journey. You know, when he was 12, 13 years old, it came out. He saw it in the movie theater growing up in Vancouver, Washington, him and his buddies. And then from there, they're like, hey, we can do this. My dad's camera's just like this. And then flash forward 17 years later, he's doing camera tests for Blair Witch 2016, which is pretty neat. So we talked about his journey, how, you know, being a kid that didn't skateboard, was able to be the kid that could hang out with the skateboarders, his buddies, and film them. So that was like his early, you know, crash course in filmmaking. And then after high school, this is all he wanted to do. He goes down to LA. Somehow within no time, he's hooked up. He's working at James Cameron Studio. So anything shot in 3D, including the original Avatar, he worked on. He had some great stories about that. And then from there, he said, you know, I want to get behind the camera. He did some reality TV, Real Housewives. We talked about some of the amazing things that he kept. You know, one of my favorite questions, as you know, is asking people mementos that he kept from set. He has some really neat ones. One is somebody's Christmas cards that he gets, which is really cool. And we talked about the short films that he shoots with his friends, sometimes directing, sometimes cinematography. And he couldn't say what company it was, but I'm sure he'll allude to it on social media when the commercial comes out. But he shot like a really big commercial when he was in Texas for like a hotel, a travel company. So that's pretty neat. And it was in the vein of James Bond, which is something we talked about later in the interview. When I ask people, you know, future projects you want to work on, that was one of his answers, like a Bond-like type movie, which is pretty cool. But yes, if you're new here, please subscribe, please like, follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And without further ado, here is Nathan Haugaard. I always like to hear about the beginning. So like Nathan, I guessed before because you were out in Florida last week. You're from Florida, but you just went there for work and sandwiches. But like, where are you from?
I am from Vancouver, Washington, which is not
Sweet.
Vancouver, British Columbia.
I lived in Portland. Yeah, I lived in Portland for a few years. Nice.
Then you know, and it's crazy how many people that you talk to, and they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't know you're Canadian," and it's but no, not Canadian, but Vancouver.
But they were close, which is kind of confusing. Like when I tell people out here, I'm in Jersey. I fall for the trap of when people are like, oh, yeah, where are you guys from? I'm like, oh, we're from New Jersey, but we lived in Portland for a few years. And like when you say Portland on the East Coast, I think Portland, Maine, which I guess that makes sense. A lot closer.
That's all you
know. Vancouver, what are they, 5 hours apart, 6 hours apart? The
Vancouver,
two
Vancouver's, yeah, probably about 5 to 6 hours if you went like straight on I-5. Yeah, probably that, yeah.
Cool, that's cool you grew up there, dude. Nice.
But yeah, that was a great place to grow up, like, you know, running around making movies in the forest. I grew up with a big forest in my backyard. And so we'd like play Army, you know, just super awesome, young, all-American boy stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, my buddies made skate videos.
Okay.
And so
that makes sense, your age. Like the 401 videos, late 90s, early
CKY.
2000s. Yes.
Remember CKY?
Hell yeah.
Yep. So we were all into that, but I wasn't a skateboarder. So then, you know, I was sort of like, all right, well, you hold the camera. So it started off like that.
Wow.
And this is like elementary school. And so I was doing that and then stole my dad's camera. And then we were like, let's start making our own movies. Blair Witch Project came out. Nice. And I was like, well, see, those dudes they made a movie with like the same gear we have. So then all of middle school was us trying to make a horror film about this, like the legend in the local forest. And then we wanted to make a Star Wars fan film that kind of got pretty big, you know, like all the prequels were coming out. So we were experimenting we painted a whole wall in our garage blue And actually, one of my favorite things we did, we wanted to do a speed bike chase sequence. And so we painted the wall blue, and then we put a bicycle in front of the wall and shot a profile shot of us on the bicycle going like this. And then for the plate, we took our tripod out to the backyard and we Scooby-Dooed it. So if you ever watch like a chase scene in an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon, it's the same background just over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Crouched underneath the tripod, and then we spun the camera really fast, so the camera's just spinning around. And then you got that sense of motion blur. So then that was our background plate for us on the bikes. So yeah, we would just mess around just doing stuff like that. And, high school, I totally hijacked my curriculum. I turned every class into a film class. I was always writing screenplays. And my whole senior year was like, how do I just make movies all the time? So I like lined up photography classes, and then we didn't have a film program. So I wrote a curriculum for a film program, and we just made movies all the time, and came to LA and kept making movies and started getting PA jobs. Had some really cool PA gigs, and yeah. And then like the coolest, it all really came together in 2009. I started working as a camera prep technician for James Cameron.
Wow. Okay.
His 3D camera company called Pace, Cameron Pace 3D. So that was the first time that I was like face to face with Hollywood, and it was so awesome.
And how old are you at that point? I'm just trying to ballpark. You're probably pretty young, like 20, 21?
Yeah, probably like 22, 23, 24, somewhere in there. Let's see.
Who came out to LA with you? Was it solo, or did you have like buddies, your buddies? Oh, okay.
No, buddy. No, it was just, there wasn't anything else that I felt like I had to do this. It was like, go make movies, which is what I'd always done my whole life, or what? Or like, what am I going to do? Like, I wasn't a great academic student. I played music, but the music program at the high school I went to was really, really like an award-winning music program. Oh. But I was always kind of the worst in the group, like I was just good enough to hang, but everyone else went on to be teachers or studio musicians. And I just wasn't that good. So I was just like, I don't know what else. Like, I don't love anything else the way I love telling stories. So I just have to go and figure it out. So I just moved down here and there was like my first PA job for some weird reality show. To this day, I don't know how they got my phone number. It's so strange. Like straight up, like I just don't know. I remember Jared Brom is the guy's name who called me. Super cool guy. But yeah, I don't know how. And I think he and I have even spoken about this. Like, how did you get my number? He's like, I have no idea.
Fate.
Yeah. And then it was just from that point on, it's so weird because you can trace back like every job I've had, you can kind of like trace back to your very first job in some way. You're just always meeting people and then this person introduces you to this person and yada, yada, yada. And so, yeah, but working at Cameron Pace I got to be a part of the prep for Scorsese's Hugo. I'd prepped Life of Pi, Final Destination 5, Shark Night 3. I was on set for Cirque du Soleil Worlds Apart. I lived in Las Vegas for a couple of months shooting that movie. James Cameron asked me to go on TV with him. I was on Attack of the Show. Do you remember that TV show?
Oh yeah.
Like, was it on the E channel or something?
Wasn't that on? Wasn't it like a gaming channel? No.
Yeah,
it's a weird channel because that's where Olivia Munn started. She was on Attack of the Show, right? Was she on it then?
Yeah. That's where she's from. Yes.
Okay.
And when I got it just left, so I did not get to see the Munn.
Oh man.
I know. It's all right. But yeah, so I was on TV, and that was pretty cool. I had friends calling me. It's like, did I just see you on TV with James Cameron? I was like, yeah.
Yeah, that's just a typical Tuesday for me now.
Pretty wild.
Yeah,
that was pretty wild.
So all this time, are you still shooting on your own? Obviously, you're working at that, but it's like one of those things. Like even while you're working, like when you're not working, you're still kind of like honing your craft because that's how you get ahead of people. No.
Yeah, I never really looked at it like getting ahead of people. It was just that's what I was hungry to do. Like
Yeah.
if I wasn't, it's to this day, if I'm not creating something, I feel there's like an internal guilt, which I go to therapy, I work on, I try to get over it because you want to just chill sometimes and
Yeah.
just like it's okay to just be. But I just have to be creating something. It's my friend Nene calls it a blessed unrest, and it's just this like there's this thing inside you. You're just like I just gotta be creating, and
Yeah.
so yeah. So yes, there's always like a day job, and that can even be now as like a director or cinematographer. You're like, cool, that sounds like a great gig. I'll go do that gig, but you're kind of always angling like what am I going to do for me on this thing, and then what will this afford me the ability to do for me, like after this thing. So yeah.
So you mentioned before I cut you off before X Games. So you're shooting everything. You're shooting
Yeah, we
sports
did
too.
everything. Well, all things 3D. So this was like 3D was booming. So this in the wake of the first Avatar. Then now it's this, and this is they hadn't really figured out post conversion stereo yet. They were developing the software to do that, but still the purest philosophy was if you want a film in stereo, you should shoot it natively in stereo, which means two cameras, and you either are going to do a side by side rig. So the two lenses or the two cameras and the whole lens and everything is right here. But the problem is that and this we would have had, they were just phasing out 2/3 inch cameras. So that would have been the Sony F23. And so it's actually F23 for a 2/3 inch chip. And those were pretty good cameras. I'm trying to think. I think Speed Racer. Don't take this with a grain of salt, but I think Speed Racer was shot on the F23. So that was a pretty cool camera. But then when you moved up to a Super 35 sized sensor, now everything is bigger. So the front element on your lens is bigger, and so you can only get your lenses so close. And so actually what James Cameron was experimenting with was, can we shave down the lenses so that you have a flat edge so that these lenses can get close? Because the lenses up front are the entry point for light coming in is such that then by the time you get all the way back to where the sensors are pretty far apart. But for good stereo, you want the sensors to kind of be as far apart as your eyes. Because then when you watch something back in 3D, if the sensors are wider than your eyes, it can kind of make you like feel sick to your stomach. So the game you're always trying to play is how do we get those camera sensors to be the same interocular distance, is what we call it, the same distance between your pupils. So then to combat this issue of like you couldn't have two cameras physically get close enough to do this, then they built what's called a beam splitter rig. So now you have one camera inverted shooting into a mirror at 45 degrees, and then the other camera is shooting through the mirror. So it's a two-way mirror.
Oh my God.
So one camera shooting through this mirror at 45 degrees, and then the other one up top shooting down into it and actually filming the reflection of an image on that mirror. So just this piece of mirror is like $8,000 for a mirror. And then the whole rig is just like crazy looking. And so they did like beam splitter rigs. That was Tron Legacy, Pirates of the Caribbean 4, Scorsese's Hugo Cabret, Life of Pi. All of those films were predominantly like your A camera is a beam splitter camera. Because what that allows you to do then, because you're not physically getting your cameras close together, you're shooting. So you can actually calibrate them so the cameras are both shooting the same image. So your interocular distance can become 0. And then that gives you the ability to slowly dial up your interocular distance. And the greater that distance, that separation, the greater the 3D effect. So James Cameron will always talk about, he's like, what's your 3D budget? He's like, if you really want to have a good 3D experience, you have a 3D budget. So then you're constantly, that's like the artistic choice of like, well, how 3D should we make this shot? And so his philosophy is kind of keep it pared back. Don't go like full blown out 3D all the time. Kind of keep it really calm. And then for those big set pieces, then maybe you really kind of increase the interocular distance. And you really increase the 3D-ness of the shot. So it was a trip to like learn all of this as a young person. You're just going like, it was like being in college, and being at school. It was really cool.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's the best way to learning on the job is, you go to school for 4 years. Like, you're going for a career, but you're never really actually in the shoes of what you want to do, especially to learn, at a place like that with James Cameron. That's crazy
Yeah.
that the camera rig. So is that why, like, because you're right, that was like that first spell of 3D.
Yes.
Like that was like the bit. Well, besides the 80s 3D, like
Right.
that they had the 80s phase of 3D.
Did you ever go to Disney and see Captain EO?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's a shame. I don't think it's there anymore. So Captain EO was a 3D music video, like Purple Rain. It was like a 20-minute experience with Michael Jackson as the star.
Oh wow.
But it's directed by Francis Ford Coppola and shot by Vittorio Storaro, who shot Apocalypse Now. And they shot it in native stereo, 70 millimeter IMAX. So they had two IMAX cameras shooting side by side. But the thing is it's friggin' IMAX cameras shooting side by side. So that film experience can be a really disorienting one because, again, the interocular distance was so great. There's a fly flying around me. The interocular distance is so great that people kind of had a hard time getting on board with it. So it was good that it was only like a 15, 20-minute experience because you're sitting there in the theater going like, whoa, like this is pretty intense. But like, no, for real though, like crazy technology, like IMAX cameras. Like this is like Nolan's wet dream, like we're going to do not one 70 millimeter camera, but two, like it's crazy. But yeah, for a long time, that was at Disneyland, Captain EO. If you ever get a chance to see Captain EO in 3D, it's wild. It's really cool.
Yeah, I'll check it out. We have family out in LA. We've been to Orlando, but we haven't gone to Disneyland yet with the kids. That might be the next trip when we're out there. But no, that's pretty wild because you're right. It's so funny with like 3D. There's the phases. They have the 80s, like the Friday the 13th. Yeah. They have the horror 3Ds, and then that era that you're talking about. And then because remember 3D TVs were huge for like there was like this small window. I feel like it was a year. I was just like, oh, 3D TV, it's where it's at. They would like have Comcast by us would have like a free 3D channel. Then it just like fizzled out.
Yeah, it is expensive. The glasses are uncomfortable because the 3D TVs had active glasses, and so the glasses have to shutter sync, and so they're flickering between different. So the TV uses its refresh rate to show you two images so fast that you can't really see. And then the glasses sync up so that one eye is operating at the right eye shutter refresh rate, and then the left eye is flickering at the left eye shutter rate. So you're only seeing one image, per coming from the TV. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So yeah, no, people weren't stoked on that. And then just, stereo production of a film is expensive because it's twice as many cameras, right? Because like every camera rig is actually two cameras. So if you think about the traditional budget of a Hollywood movie, now you're doubling it.
Yeah.
And so they started to get really good at what's called post-conversion. So you shoot your film in mono on set, and then they would do a few different tricks. Like they could shoot plates. Are you familiar with like what plates are?
Yeah.
So you shoot plates. And so then that way, because the reason you need to shoot a plate is because you have to understand what's behind the thing that you're going to set your convergence point on. So your convergence point is these two cameras are going to intersect. Your fields of view are going to intersect at a point, and that point of intersection is called your convergence point. And your convergence point is the screen. So anything that happens in front of that convergence point is popping out of the screen at you. And anything that happens behind it is depth. And so you have to understand, okay, this eye is going to kind of see, my right eye is going to see around to the right a little bit. So then you'd shoot a plate so that you can, when you manufacture this frame to lock in that convergence point, you can kind of know like what's there, like what's around the thing. So they just kept experimenting with different ways to do this. And now, the software is beyond, it just blows my mind what people can do.
Yeah. So. And then like Star Wars tried to cash in on that when they re-put the movies out in like the 2012, and they weren't even doing like actual like 3D. It was more like just pulling things forward. So like when you're watching with the glasses on, like things just look closer. Like nothing really moved too closer. Jurassic Park was, I think, the one of the best that did it. The original Jurassic Park they re-put in the movie theater. It was like pretty good.
I missed that. I didn't see that.
The
The
raptors
original.
jumping through the ceiling looked like they were coming out of the screen. It was really good.
Yeah, there's so many cool things that come and go to the theaters that you're always a little bit bummed. Like I just wanted to go see Return of the Jedi in the theater, period, this past
Yeah.
May. Um, and yeah, I missed it. I wasn't able to go, but it's just great getting to go back. If you some of those classics, if you haven't seen them on a big screen, it's so awesome when they bring those back to go and
Yeah.
check them out.
In the
It's
90s
different.
when you were young, like just before the prequels came out. I don't know if you were
Hmm.
too young then, but when they redid all those movies to like set up the prequels, I think it was 96, 97, 98. They
Yeah,
did the original 3 films and it was still pretty cool. Like my dad saw them
amazing.
20 years prior, so it was pretty neat. So
Yeah.
back to you, Nathan. So like from there, you're working with Cameron, and then what
Hmm.
was like the job? Because obviously you were shooting movies as a kid, so it wasn't like you're
Hmm.
just a camera operator. You had this vision for like the full,
Hmm.
like directing and doing all that. So like from there, what was like the first like? Because there's a lot of things on IMDb. I know some aren't like correct, but there's like things you're working on first credit, and this might be when you first got out to LA. Seventh and Hill, still
Yeah.
photographer for like a short film. Was that out in LA or still back home?
No, that was here. That was
Cool.
here. I met this super cool guy, Ryan Postis. Um, he's just doing awesome stuff. If you look up Ryan, he's always been a really cool visionary, and he and I hit it off. And he gave me a chance to come and just help him make this film. They shot that on 35 millimeter. We shot down in the Diamond District in downtown LA. That was just a super cool experience. But yeah, I did like some production design stuff. Like I was helping set up shots and just help. It was like I was just kind of like hanging out, like helping
Yeah.
any way I could. It was cool to be a part. I think we had to do reshoots, and my buddy Anthony Rigo flew down from Vancouver, Washington. We had made movies together in high school. I was like, dude, come help me make this movie with these cool dudes. And so he came down, and yeah, that was just a really fun experience. But yeah, that was a long time ago. Was that 2007?
That's what it has on here. But it's like it's all about just being on a set. Even like
Yeah.
even if you get, obviously getting paid's great, but it's like the experience is like a huge factor too. So what would you
Yeah.
say the first time, obviously like working with Cameron, going on Attack of the Show, like being involved in
Hmm.
so many like huge projects, but was there
Hmm.
something like individually, like another thing you did after that? Cause there's like, somehow you're working on Real Housewives or like a Bieber music video.
Well, Bieber was because it was
Part
3D.
of that. Okay. Yeah.
So that was all. Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's varied, right?
Yeah.
It comes from just saying like yes and just being excited. Like so, I'm kind of always just so Bieber was. I was a 3D camera assistant for that, so I was pulling convergence. So you have someone pulling focus and then someone pulling convergence. So that's what I did on Bieber, and that was at Madison Square Garden, New York. That was
Nice.
cool. And then Housewives was I want to operate a camera. Like I don't want to be a career assistant. I want to shoot. And it's like, well, if you want to shoot a movie, good luck doing that before you're 50 years old. I was like, got it. And I was like, I've been, I was like, maybe I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because I was like, I don't know if I really want to do. I don't want to pull focus for the rest of my life. I want to
Yeah.
be more, So it's like, yeah, maybe movies aren't right for you. Maybe you should go do TV. And it was really easy to become an operator in reality TV. So I went and did that, and I learned a lot about lighting, especially beauty lighting. Those women, I forgot who are the DP for the first season that I worked on of Orange County or Beverly Hills, some really solid cinematographers. But they handed us as camera operators this lighting diagram. It was like, this is the look of the interview. And man, for just like a lock off sit down interview, I think we would use like 37 lights.
Wow.
I mean, it was just really wild, really, really, really wild. But I learned so much about beauty lighting and eye lighting and hair, like clamshell lighting, like all these old school techniques to light up these women. And so that was really cool. And then I got to travel with reality TV and meet some phenomenally talented people, work on some really cool shows, and just shoot, just practice because it's storytelling too. Like that's the cool thing about reality TV is you don't get a take two. So you really develop an ear to listen for story in the moment. You can't kind of zone out and you're just sort of like holding a shot and like, is it in focus? Yes. Okay, great. When do I go? You know, she's talking about, if you're shooting a reality scene, she's talking about so-and-so over there. And in the back of your mind, you're kind of going like, oh, well, where are they at? And then I'm going to have to go over here. And then sometimes you'll be filming a scene with 2 or 3 people and you're by yourself. So then you have to make choices in the moment of, okay, I've been filming Doug talk for a minute, but Doug's talking to Nathan. So we're going to have to pan over to Nathan to get like a cutaway shot. But when's a good time to do that? So you're listening to what he's going to say. It's like, so you're making all these editorial choices on the fly. And so it's a great education. I had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, no. And you're like you said, you're operating a camera and it's so terrible. So did you really feel that when somebody said that to you? Like, if you want to work on a movie, like you're going to have to be 50. Was that something like,
oh yeah,
like you felt like that was serious? Because obviously you changed that, right? You're not 50.
No, but I also, I have peers that played the game and they went the traditional route and now they're doing, I don't know. I mean, like we're all doing cool stuff, but, like what's Nick's last name? There's a couple of camera operators that, a buddy of mine was the Steadicam operator for the last season, 2 seasons of Stranger Things.
Oh,
so
okay,
he's
cool.
doing so well. And then the camera PA on Transformers 3, I think it was, he's now like Nolan's Steadicam operator.
Oh, wow.
So there were guys that were just like nose to the grindstone and they stuck it out, and they did like 15 years. And then they got their shot. And so, that's there. But I do like being a director of photography because I get to influence the storytelling more. And I think on a big film, not to say that Steadicam operators don't influence story, they absolutely do, unquestionably. And on really big movies, I mean, like sometimes the camera operator talks more to the director than the cinematographer even does. I've got friends who have told me crazy stories about working on huge, huge, huge movies where that's the case. But what I love about being a director of photography is, being the sort of like, I mean, to put it plainly, like you're the lens through which the story passes, so it's like really finding that point of view and walking into a moment going like, we have the power to convey anything. So what are we trying to convey? And there's the words, and how do I turn the words into an image? And that's the most exciting thing for me. And so that's why I love being a cinematographer. And so I just kept pursuing that.
Yeah.
And and I just love it.
How long did you, how early on, so you've done Steadicam operating?
Well, no, I would never call myself a Steadicam operator. It was called a glide cam. And I had a glide cam back in like 2011, 2012, but that was like super rinky dink. It was, it had like the vest and a little arm, but this is before there was like wireless focus was widely available. So I put a 5D Mark II on a glide cam and you would set a focus point, and just kind of rock it. And just, if you had to do like a close up of someone, you had to hold that distance to keep them in focus, because if
Yeah.
you change distance or they go to focus. So, but it was enough to know when I talk to my Steadicam operators, I know what I'm asking them to do. Like I don't ask them unreasonable requests. Like, oh, you can't. Well, why can't you? Why can't you just? And they're like, dude, because we can't, right? So that's the cool thing about, kind of tiptoeing into someone else's job, just to know enough to know how to have a creative conversation about what's possible.
And they respect that too. If you're asking like the right questions about like what they're using and how I talked to this guy, Charles Papper. Does that name ring a bell at all? He was like a steady. He's worked on like a bunch of cool stuff, and he became like, from his Steadicam operating days, he ended up being like the cinematographer for a lot of like Comedy Central shows. Like he worked on Key and Peele for the whole series run. Somebody liked the way he did it. So he went from that show to another comedy, but he was like a steady cam operator. And then he was like teaching classes for it, but he wasn't able to get on sets. Like he was teaching the camera operators in Hollywood, but it was still that thing because he was pretty young. It was like, all right, well, thanks for teaching us. And then he finally broke through. I think his first movie that he did that for was either, I think it was Major League 3, which I interviewed him for, or it was God, the one with Ed Norton and with the white supremacy. I should know off the top of my head, but
History X.
Yeah, American History X. Yeah, that was one of his. Yeah, he worked on that. That was one of his first movies.
Wow, that's a pretty cool
Yeah,
project to work on.
Yeah,
pretty wild.
Yeah, his reel. I forgot what his reel was, but he said the guy who hired him wasn't even paying attention when he put the tape in and was like reading a newspaper. And then when the tape stopped, he says, "Okay, you got the job." But that's how Hollywood is, right?
Sometimes it's all it takes, you know. It's like, and you can't question it, right? You just like, it's just. I was meant to be here. It was always meant to be, you know. Go with it.
So I know IMDb is not 100%, but I always think it's pretty cool if this is right, just because what you said earlier. Did you work on Blair Witch in 2016?
Yeah, I worked on the camera tests.
Dude, that's the full circle. So you're with your buddies in 99, and I remember like before the internet, when I saw that in the movie theater, it was like, even though I think I was in 7th grade, I can't believe how dumb I was, but I'm like, this is real, dude. Like, I remember it felt so real.
Yeah. The end of that movie still freaks me out.
Oh, dude. Because it felt real. Like, the way it was filmed, like you said, like, you know, as a kid, you can have access to your dad's equipment, and this is, like, what they shot it with. But it felt so real. Like, when you're watching the movie and the one guy's going nuts, like, you know what? I threw the map in the river. Like, he's, like, going crazy. But when you see him standing in the corner, it's, like, I don't know. It's just still good.
That's wild. Yeah, I think so. I like it.
And then you got to work on that, which is cool. Like 2016, 17, 18 years later.
Yeah, it's a trip. Well, this past Christmas was wild. I went home back to Portland for Christmas, and I wanted to watch Avatar: The Way of Water in the same theater that I watched the first Avatar in. So I went with my girlfriend and her family, and that was a wild experience, man. This is like, I remember going to that theater and seeing Avatar in 3D, and that was in 2007, also 2006. So I would have flown home from LA for the holidays probably, and it's like, wow, this is a trip. This is wild. And then, what is that? Is that 16 years later, 15 years later, that I'm watching the sequel? Now my name is in the end credits. It's like, wild.
Yeah,
it's cool. Yeah,
very cool.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
It's like those full circle moments. You think about why you got inspired to do anything, or person that you inspired them, and then you meet them. You know, obviously, I'm sure growing up, like James Cameron, like how many movies that you know, and it's like you're talking to him and getting advice from him and learning from him. So just that in itself is pretty wild.
Yeah. That every day on set on Way of Water was just sort of like, what is happening right now? Like, this is just it was just such a trip. Yeah, man, such a trip. You just be sitting there looking around and you're like, what is even, it didn't feel real, Doug. Like, it really didn't feel, there's this weird, unexplainable part of me that was like, oh, this is this thing that's happening that no one would ever believe, and it's probably not real, and there will never be, because it's so monumental also, you know, because like I was working on Way of Water in 2017.
Yeah,
and it came out.
Yeah,
it came out in 2022. So, you know, it's like, no one's ever going to see this movie. It's not real. It's not a real thing. Like, there's no way that this is like the Avatar. It's just a trip. You're like, I'm here. And then it comes out, you're like, wow,
Yeah.
wow, so wild, so
It's
wild.
wild because a movie was planned to take that long. That's like the wildest part. Because other movies, it's like I was watching an interview like 2 months ago. Jamie Foxx actually filmed a movie with
Oh, yeah.
Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, this is very famous. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, he's never gonna put the movie out. Jamie Foxx will
Yeah,
never put the movie out. Because I think in the movie, I think Robert Downey plays like a Mexican or something. Like something crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that happens. Like movies get shelved forever, like Batgirl. Like it's really crazy to think about. Movies get all this money spent in them. It's like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, that's wild. I had my gaffer worked on an Apple commercial that was directed by Inarritu. It's directed by Inarritu, shot by Lebesky, by Chivo. So they did this like huge Apple commercial back in the day. Never released it.
Yeah.
Apple was like, nah. You know, like, but they spent like millions on this commercial. And I was like, nah. Wow.
But with Avatar, that was like the plan. It's going to take this long. I mean, I'm sure COVID probably put a hiccup on it.
Yeah, the COVID put a hiccup on it. And then, you know, I think the plan was always, I mean, just, you know, I don't know Jim so well that I'm on the inside. But, you know, I know that it's going to be done when it's done, you know. And it's like, it can't take forever, but also it can't be not done, you know. So it's like, how much money can we throw at it? You know, he has so many superpowers. Both him and John Lando have, and then also Richie Bainham, who won the Academy Award for visual effects. Those guys have such an awesome, you know, like combined superpower to know the most economical way to wield that much money, because it's the most expensive movie ever made. So you're not just throwing money blindly at problems. You're doing things really economically to accomplish something that's A, never been done before, and B, we're going to get it done. You know, like we're going to finish it. It's going to look amazing. And gosh, it's just so awesome, you know, to watch people at the top of their game just crushing it. It's just incredible.
And what's cool is when you go back, because I interviewed somebody that was in Piranha 2, James' very early movie, and he only, I think he ended up only directing, I think like 75% of it. But it's funny when you go back and watch these movies, even if you go back and watch, I wouldn't even say like the first, the Hills Have Eyes, like the sequel, and you're seeing these guys, Wes Craven young, Cameron young, and you just see like, it's like, you know, Piranha 2, the piranhas are flying at people, they're hiding cadaver, like craziest shit off the wall. But it's like, it looks really good. You felt like you were watching Jaws. Like that's how well done the movie was shot. So you're like, oh, this guy can get, you know, he's going to obviously be something. And then everything took off like the next year, I think, or 2 years later. So,
well, I was having this conversation with another director friend of mine, and I think the most important thing to have when we make, because I shoot, you know, like I shoot low budget movies with my friends, and it's the best. You know, we have the best time because we're doing our own thing. You know, it's like I don't care how the movie's received or who watches it. Like we're having fun. Like we're making movies. But what's the difference between a bad movie and a good bad movie? And I think it's just perspective. And I think it's, you know, no one tries to make a bad movie, but if you go in with a strong point of view and a strong perspective and a love for cinema, you can't help but make a pretty good movie. So I think that's what's apparent when you watch, you know, filmmakers that we think are great, and you look at their early work and you go like, yeah, there's a strong point of view here. You know, like they see it, and then you just unequivocally pursue what you see in your head.
Yeah.
You know, people go like, and you can't sit around, and filmmaking by committee never works. It just doesn't work. People wonder, it's like, how come I don't like, you know, like all these shows, or how come I don't like all these movies? It's like, because like 30 people told the director what to do.
Yeah.
It's like he didn't get to just show up and he's like, this is what we're doing, and piss off. It's like, no, he had to say, okay, well, all right, you know, so and so wants this scene, then okay, we'll do that way for them, and then so and so then they want, and it's like, and you know, and again, like I know people, and I've heard stories about filmmakers that are working at a high level, and they're super burned out. You know, it's like if friends of friends who've worked on big films that we don't need to name names, but it's
Yeah.
they're like, oh, you want to know why that movie sucked? I was in the room, dude, and I saw that person having to answer to the executives, and the executives are just like, I think it should be more green. Can we make it more green? And they go back to their phone, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, just make it more green. I don't care. Fine, you know. And it's not their movie anymore, you know. And that happens all the time.
TV is bad with that. I've talked to some TV directors, and they've said like they don't want to say too much, but it is hard on some shows because it's not like you're going to go in and for the viewer when they're watching CSI Miami, you know, this week, next week's got to look the same. So you're going in there and you're pretty much trying to copy what was done the week before or the week before that and the week before that. And I don't know, it's weird because you're watching all these shows and you're like, oh man, I feel like I'm watching this, but it's a different director for the most part every week. Like it's crazy.
Well, I know. I just like Russell Carpenter, who shot Way of Water. He was just on Deacon's podcast, and he was talking about getting fired off of like one of those procedurals because the director came in for the next week with all these great ideas, and he was like, I love this. Yeah, let's do that. So he starts doing all this stuff, and the studio comes out like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, my job is to tell the director, no, you can't do that because we have. Man, he's like, I don't want to play this game, so you know, it didn't work out. But yeah, you're totally right.
No, it stinks, but I guess it stinks for the director, but for the audience, I guess some people would be like, "Hey, this looks totally different this week." But it would be kind of fun. Like I don't know if you watch After Party on Apple. That's like a fun thing they did. It's mostly comedians in it, but what they do is there's like a murder. But what they did the first season, I haven't watched second season yet. The first season, each episode was shot different. So like Ike Barinholtz's episode was kind of like a action movie. Like it was like he was in Fast and the Furious, the way it was like shot. And then the other one was like more of like a French art film. And they do like all the different based on how the character is in the show. But no, it's clever to do things like that. But those shows that are, you know, on every week, like Grey's Anatomy is going to look the same no matter who, you know, no matter when you tune in.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So for you, because obviously filmmaking is different nowadays. Obviously, what goes into it, I think, is like the XYZ of it. It's the same. Maybe obviously the equipment, things like that are different. But like, what does it take to get to that next level? Because obviously your goal, and you want to do it way before 50, and I think you will, is to, you know, be a cinematographer on like a major film. Like it, but it seems like it's the gap is so much. I don't know. Maybe it was always the same way, but do you feel like it's like what's the steps to get there?
I don't know. Yeah, well, I don't know. I feel like I think I definitely have friends who will maybe get there before I do because they've played by the rules a bit better than I have. You know, like it's just I don't know, like. But it's just like that goes back to like who I was in high school. Like I was never the person who's like, give me a homework assignment. I was like, nah, you know, like I don't really feel like doing that. I'm gonna do something else. Like I've always wanted to do it my way, for better, for worse. And so, you know, working on I really want to shoot a James Bond movie. That's my goal for sure.
Nice.
Like, you know, like, I want to do a James Bond movie. And if I can't shoot a James Bond movie, I'm going to do something that looks and feels like a James Bond movie. Like I just directed a commercial for a hotel in Dallas, and my pitch was like, we're going to do a hotel commercial, but it's also a James Bond movie. Like that's what we're going to do. We're going to make it really sexy and fun and cool. And they were like, great, we love it.
That's cool. How'd that go? It was like a local, like a Marriott, or?
I will stay tuned. I'll tell you more about it when we get closer to.
That's awesome.
But it's a big international brand, and it's a new project that they're developing, and we got to do all of the new branding for this new project.
Sweet.
So,
was that? Would you say to date that's like your biggest directing?
Was very. Yes, it's
Cool.
the biggest directing I've had for
Awesome.
sure. But I directed it and DP'd it.
Oh, nice.
So, it was so much fun, man. We just had a great time. But what I'm focused on in terms of feature films now is just working with people that make me happy and who are really interested in collaborating. So that's going to be smaller films. So we're just wrapping up a beautiful feature film called Good Bad Things, directed by Shane Stanger. And we're finishing up color like today. We were working on the color correction. This thing is going to be huge. People are going to flip for this movie.
Cool.
And so I want to do this again. Like the whole experience that we had in Good Bad Things, I want to do that again. So I think that that's a more enjoyable experience than you would have on a $100 million movie.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just we're with a more tight knit group of people, and everyone's heard. Everyone has a say, and at like an artist level, not like at a studio level where like the studio has the say. That feels much more like a 9 to 5. Whereas a film like Good Bad Things is like, let's all care a lot about this thing and put our hearts into it, and then put this work of love out into the world to share with people. So by far, that was the best experience I've ever had on a feature film, and so I just want to do that again.
That's awesome. And like festivals, things like that. But still, even with that, that's how you can get noticed too, because that's how they, I don't know if it's like the studios or producers, they go to, I'm sure all the not the Comic Cons, but the film festivals, and they're like, hey, that guy has an eye. It looks good. It's the way it's shot. And then, because there has to be a way for those people to get to the next level. Like there has to be, but I just don't know. Like I've talked to people that are directors, but they get told whenever they would go in, like Griffin First. His dad was Stephen First. You ever see Animal House? His dad was Flounder in Animal House. So,
Okay.
So Griffin like grew up sort of in the industry. Like he was a kid on set, like when his dad was on not St. Elmo's Fire, but St. Elsewhere, like Denzel. And so he was just saying like, man, I always wanted to be a director. So he was like acting, and then he get people be like, hey, do you want to direct? You can direct this horror movie for the Sci-Fi Channel. So he did like 5 or 6 of those. This is awesome. Yeah. But then he's like, no, I can't even I go for like a drama, and they're like, yeah, but you did this. And it's like, I don't know. Do people do that? I don't think I've ever watched a movie on IMDb. Like before I watch it, put on like look at IMDb and be like, let's see what the director did before this. And it's like, oh, he did like Sorority Massacre 7. Oh, I can't watch this. But I guess the studios do that for some dumb reason. But like, just because you make something that might look great, just because it's a certain genre or people are like certain people are in it. But I think that's the thing that it's still a hard thing to break up to the next level. But I love that you have that passion like that. Like you'll get there in your own way. No, you're here, but I'm saying like you're happy while you're working. It's not 9 to 5. You're not staring at the clock,
Yeah, like, yeah, it's just, like someone, Robert Altman went and talked to the AFI, towards the end of his career, and they were asking him about the films of his that worked versus the ones that didn't work, like his successes versus his failures. And he's like, I've only ever had successes. Like I've only ever, he's like, I don't, your metric for my films is that's your interpretation of what I do. It's like, as far as I'm concerned, like, I've only ever been working, and I've only ever been having a great time doing it. And it's just a better way to live, because you can sit and you could just be obsessed with getting to a certain point. But I deeply feel that if you're exclusively obsessed with sort of getting to some, subjective point in your career, if it's like a monetary value thing, like a budget, I don't know what it is. Like, what's your goal?
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd be happy in the same way. Like I want to be happy today. So what I really hope, like Good Bad Things, for me, the best outcome would be we get accepted into a great festival, and I get to go and I get to meet some other filmmakers that are making more films like this. And I get to talk to them about like, well, what are you doing? What are you excited to do next? And this is what we're going to do next. And just, meeting other like-minded creators. And then, if there's something for us to work on together, great. But yeah, I'm super interested to see how this strike that we're going through finishes out. But I've had a number of people say something to the effect of like, oh, this is like kind of came out of nowhere and this happened so fast. I'm like, listen, this did not come out of nowhere. This is happening since Universal was sold to this like Japanese corporation in the 90s. Like there's a really great book, The Men Who Would Be King, that talks about Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen starting DreamWorks.
Okay.
And it really kind of, as they are starting their own studio, it's covering the end of studios as the world had known. It was the end of like the Robert Evans and the studio head. And it's the beginning of now, like studios are run solely by corporations. So these aren't filmmakers. These are, you know, guys with masters in business coming in, making the decisions. And so it all started then. So like a conversation about, you know, AI taking jobs, it's like the jobs have already been gone. Like they've been being paid less because they don't want creative answers. They want the same product they sold last week again. So we don't need some crazy, weird, wacky idea because it's not safe. And if I take a risk and it fails, I lose my job, my share price goes down, and I don't want that. I want the boat. I want the house in France. I want my share price. So let's change it to a subscription model that only benefits shareholders and upper management, the CEOs. It doesn't benefit subscription-based models do not benefit artists at all because you have no way to directly correlate the success of your project to the money that it made for the company. The company's just trying to toe the line. But like with an ad model, you know, Seinfeld knows how good Seinfeld's doing because advertisers are willing to pay X to advertise during Seinfeld. So it's like the show's doing well, Friends is doing well, like that, you can understand that. But when people are just paying the subscription every month, these companies don't really care how good the product is. They just want a product to toe the line. The dude who made Squid Games totally got like hosed on his deal. Like he didn't get any residuals. He didn't get any bonus. Netflix paid him a flat fee. And now there's some reporting that that show made like I don't know, again, like how they figure out how much it made is weird. It's like in additional subscriptions, I guess, but it kind of made $900 million for Netflix. So it's their most profitable franchise to date. And none of that movie went to the guy who created the show.
That's insane.
So it's like this has all been happening. And now AI is kind of the next big thing where it's the studios are going like, well, great. Because AI can't create anything new. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
AI is like, it's your Google Assistant. And so it takes all available information or whatever the AI coder tells it to take from. Okay, pull from this, pull from this, pull from this. And then the AI goes, okay, great. I'm going to pull from this to answer whatever questions you have. So when you give it a prompt like, hey, make me a movie like this, it's just going to regurgitate what it can find on the internet. So studio heads are going like, well, great. That's all we want. We want to regurgitate what we know works. So, hey, do what worked last week, but spin it a little bit. So I think that like AI is great for these subscription-based models. And, you know, there's no winning that battle. So like this is why like you talk about like moving on and like doing that. It's like the whole world's that whole thing is so different that I'm scared I would get to a place where, you know, it's like if I am DPing some big movie, you listen to like the DPs that I love, and they talk about working on these big projects. I forgot what's his name who shot the Han Solo movie, and it's like it's really scary to get to a big studio place like that. You want to take a risk as a cinematographer, and then you've got the studio head coming down going like, it's too dark, you know, like we don't like the way that this looks. And this doesn't sound like fun. What sounds like way more fun is using the democratization of technology, using digital cameras economically, like what I did on Good Bad Things, and working with young artists who want to take risks. And so you spend a little bit of money and you take a lot of risk and you do something original. And you're trying to do things that break the system, that break the status quo, that you just don't see. Because I think people are really hungry for original content, for original IP and things that go outside the norm. Barbie's doing really well this weekend, and that's a really spin on the property. Oppenheimer is doing double what they thought it was going to do. And every showtime in LA that is on 70 millimeter film is like sold out. And it's a heady, it's not a Marvel movie. You know, it's nonstop dialogue for 3 hours talking about physics and science, and it's sold out. So, you know, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I really want to keep making small films that, you know, give us the opportunity to experiment and try something different and reach people in a way that we used to, you know, like I want to affect people viscerally the way that like Taxi Driver affected me or Clockwork Orange affected me the way I saw it. And you just don't see films like that getting made very often anymore.
Yeah, because nobody wants to, like you said, take the risk at all. They don't want to. And even though it's like they would probably still be fine because they have 90% of all their other movies are a reprint or another Marvel movie that they know is going to make X amount of dollars, then you could make those risks. Like those studios in the 80s, like Canon Film Group, they would do like the cookie cutter action movie, which I still love watching, like the Death Wish films with aging Charles Bronson or any like the Chuck Norris movies. They would make the money on that. And then they would like shoot these out of nowhere. They would have like Runaway Train, like an Oscar movie with like Eric Roberts and John Voight. And then they would have like Barfly, a really young Mickey Rourke in a movie. And like was like a great film. And then they have like all the schlock that they throw out. But you have like that, that like happy, like pie chart. 90% is going to be like, you know, it's going to do what you want it to do. And then 10% like, hey, try something new. But no, so when it comes to the strike right now, like you guys are a different union, right? It's totally separate.
Well, yeah, we had our strike earlier, and everyone in my union voted no against the deal. So by popular vote, the cinematographers, the camera guild, local 600, IATSE 600, voted no. We don't like the deal. And our leadership said, we cannot in good faith proceed with a no vote because we already kind of told them we would take the deal. And we were like, well, why did we even vote then, dude?
Yeah.
Like what? It was so wild. So yeah, I mean, it's just so like, and you know, the camera union, I can't speak for 728, which is the electricians, or 80, which is the grips. They don't help you get work.
Really?
So no, it's a really interesting situation where it's just a permission structure where you can't work on the good projects unless you're in, but also you can't get in unless you work on the really good projects. So you're like catch 22. What am I supposed to do here? So, you know, my own pathway into the union is a story for another episode, another day. But, you know, it's like to say I'm disenfranchised would be accurate. You know, it's like it's never directly helped me. I've been on the benefiting side where being in the union has been, you know, I've worked like a 20-hour day and I got a sweet paycheck. And then I was like, great. But also if you're working on a great project with a great director and a producer who's a solid human being, you know, I have made not a lot of money, but I have been cared for deeply. You know, like I've been a part of a family where it's like we all are working really, really hard. We're not making a lot of money, but we're eating well and we're sleeping well and it's safe. So, you know, it's like you can find the unions are great to protect the people who work on these big studio projects where it is like a 9-to-5 job. But they're just going to keep pushing to lower their costs to, you know, to profit more. And that's only going to continue, you know, like there's no interest in, you know, art for art's sake. That's not really there. You know, I don't know. It's just, I think you just got to like, just be happy doing what you're doing. Don't waste your time pining for what could be, you know, like there's something else. And if you're super hungry to play the game, then yeah, play the game and have fun. And there's beautiful, beautiful work being done by my peers, you know, on some of those big projects. You know, it's like the pinnacle of technical achievement. A lot of these shows, like the new Indiana Jones, I'm like, technically the most perfect looking film. Not my favorite movie, but like technically I'm watching Like, this is wild. Like, it's just so stunning. Like, it's just so stunningly beautiful. So it's like, yeah, there's great craftsmanship done there, but like, I just, is it fulfilling? Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
It's all
It's
about,
not,
whatever. It's like whatever works for, Nathan, or whatever works for anyone, like when it comes to life, because you're right. Like, you want to be happy today. It's not like you're going to be like, hey, you know what? In 10,
yeah.
15 years, I'm going to be miserable for 10 to 15 years, but in 15 years, it's going to be great. But in a year, you could walk across the street and get hit by a car. So it's like, there's so many
That's
like,
exactly right.
yeah,
That's exactly right, man. I mean, it's just
enjoy
a
it.
couple of like family friends that we've had that have passed away in the last couple of years that have been really unexpected has made me think about this even more. We're going like, I want to love what I'm doing right now because nothing is certain in this life. Nothing is certain.
No.
And it's like, oh my goodness, like I would rather go and just, it's just, I got a roof over my head. I'm eating well. I love my car, like I love my hobbies. It's like life is good, like what more do you want? It's like we're super blessed to live in America. I feel that way. It's just, I just feel so lucky. So lucky. I just, like I live near the beach in Los Angeles. It's like, what more do you want, man? It's just, so yeah.
So we're like right at an hour, and this has been great. Just a few more things just to like circle back. You're talking about the AI, and it's so funny. And I know that like people that listen to this are obviously people that like movies and TV and stuff, but it's so funny that the people out there that are like, that make fun of Hollywood, make fun of actors, or like people that work in film. But it is so true that trends and things look to Hollywood. Like you'll see something in a movie or a TV show, and then like a month later, it might be like the next like style trend or something. And it's so silly. Like Barry Livingston, he was one of he was on My Three Sons, character actor in a million things. He's been acting since like the 60s. He said something that was so profound online. And he was talking about like, you think AI is just about actors? If it works here, then all other jobs that are able to use it are going to use it. And I'm like, you know what? That's so true. Like, because that's the way people look. And it's so true when it comes to AI, when you mess around with it. Because when it first came out, like I messed around with it. And it was funny. Because I've been jonesing for a Friday the 13th part 13. Like it has to be made. Like they're finally hopefully settling this shit between those two guys, Victor Miller and that other guy that's such a douche. But anyway, like they finally figured it out. Like, hey, you own Jason Voorhees, I own the origin story. So that's why some prequels coming out on Peacock, and then hopefully eventually a 13th movie. But I always had an idea of all of the survivors getting together and somehow where they're at Crystal Lake, Jason comes back. So I had it write like a script, and it was really bad. But the worst part was at the very end. And I don't know, I guess it takes it from like cartoons almost, but it was like, and then what the hell did it say? It said Jason looks at the camera, pulls up his mask, and winks. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what is this? Like an end of like not like Scooby-Doo, but like Jesus Christ. But it's funny, like that silly stuff. But what the studios think is they'll take that and be like, oh, well, we know he doesn't wink. We'll make it so he doesn't wink. And then like that's their idea of taking some regurgitated thing and then just putting something, having somebody punch it up. Like really just have punch up writers, no original ideas.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to happen. It's just, we can argue and fight, but like already SAG signed like 43 petitions for films to work during the strike.
I saw that.
So they bought people off, it's like people got off. Like, that's all it is. It's just like, oh, we feel very strongly about the cause and blah, blah, blah. It's just like any actor working on any of those films is a sellout. Like, they all took the paycheck, all took the deal. They're like, well, because the people who have the capability of bypassing a strike like this are screwing over the hundreds of thousands of people who don't have the opportunity to work on projects that big. So you've just completely nullified the whole situation. The studios have already won. So regardless of whatever the outcome is for any of this, for any union, for any guild, it's like the writing's on the wall. Like it's over. Like it's over. So stop fighting it and just embrace doing your own thing. The smartest people in the world right now are the YouTube creators, the King Batches and the Adam W's and the Hannah Stockings of the world. Like people who have their own brand and they can do their own thing on YouTube. And like that's it. Like you have to be your own creator and you've got to be able to use the technology. So like I used AI on Good Bad Things. I used autofocus. Autofocus is AI. You know, it's using algorithms and LiDAR technology go like, you know, and it's making a creative choice about where is the focus at. That's artificial intelligence. And I did that so that I could have like the camera crew was like just me. It's like, we don't have a lot of a budget. And I was like, well, great. Like, let's just use technology to our advantage and not have a huge crew. And then we can stay on budget. So it's like, go and tell stories. You know, it's like, that's what's happening. Don't get into the film business to get rich. You're a storyteller to be a storyteller. You're a storyteller to discuss and investigate the human condition. You know, like, you know, Nolan didn't write Oppenheimer to get rich. Nolan investigated a man who forever permanently changed the world that we knew. Yeah. That's what that film was about, you know, and like he's a conflicted character. And it was a conflicted choice to participate in it. You know, the whole thing is fascinating. That's what art is, man. It's like, you know, we have to keep investigating. It's so wild. And I feel like it's unique to cinema. Cinema is beautiful in that it's the culmination of every art form ever invented, right? Like we take painting and photography and music and performance, you know, acting, and we've just meshed them all together and we've put a motion picture camera now. And then all these other mediums get squeezed through a motion picture camera. And now you have a new art form. But for all of those former art, it's like, you know, no one got like rich and famous. Like Monet was not like a rich and famous painter. You know, it's just like, so like Degas wasn't like a gazillionaire. You know, Degas did not have a private jet. You know, like these artists like back in the day, like so many of them, you know, would die with no one knowing who they were, and they would become famous for their work long after they were gone. But now we're such a fame conscious society. It's this very I feel like it's very American. It's very capitalist. You know, we pursue art as a means to fame. And if that's your goal, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, like you can play that game, and the Kardashians do it really, really well.
They do. They stopped their show and then they went on to another network and got like paid whatever. But I think the one thing to not talk too much about the AI and the strike, but I think the one thing that was like eye-opening for people was like, I've interviewed actors and they talk about like, I helped an actor write a book, the guy, Larry Hankin. And he would talk about like, hey, you know what? It's great when I get my residual checks because that helps pay rent. And like, he has 200 plus credits for, you know, from like the 70s, 80s and 90s. And so like, that's great. But it's, I saw a thing with Mandy Moore showing a residual check that was 8 cents for This Is Us. And I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like,
it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy that CEOs are making $300 million, you know, a year or something.
Like any company, like you should not make 400 times what the lowest paid employee makes. Like it's too much money. Like I know like Bernie Sanders would love what we're talking about right now, but it's true. Like there shouldn't be that much money to like one person. I don't know.
Yeah. So all of that to say, we could either sit around just like complain, or we could like get to work. And so, you know, and this is, I'm speaking to myself right now, but you know, I'm writing a feature film with my partner Matt. That we did the commercial in Dallas together, and you know, it's just the technology exists. Like you don't, you know, shooting on digital is super cheap. And LED technology for lighting doesn't require a lot of power, and we've got plenty of like super talented friends who are actors. And then you can go to places in the world where you show up and you tell them that you're making a movie, and people support you. Where it's not like there tends to be a thing in Los Angeles where people find out that you're making a movie and they just like, oh well, I'm going to make your life miserable until you pay me. But you go to some place in the world,
Yeah.
and like I was shooting up in Portland, Oregon, and we're shooting downtown Portland late at night, and Max, the subway train
Yeah. Oh yeah.
around, it's coming. We're filming in the middle of the road, and these cops were walking. I was like, man, we're gonna get shut down because we're filming in the middle of the street. These cops walk up to us and they go, "You guys making a movie?" We're like, "Yeah." And they go, "Do you want us to hold the train for you so you can finish filming your movie?" We're like, "What?"
Nice.
So it's like, combine all that stuff, combine the passion, the love, the new technology, and people who just like love it. It's like go tell stories. It's like, and then release it on YouTube. And it'll get seen. If it's good, it'll get seen. And go to film festivals, it'll get seen. And if people like it, more people will see it. And that's what just really excites me. I put my energy into it. I put my heart into it. And if we just keep focusing on doing things that we think will excite audiences and inspire people to live healthier, better lives, and ask questions, it's like, great.
That's what it's all about. Nathan, last question before I let you go. I always like asking people this. So when you're when you're working on sets, was there any mementos that you kept, or did Cameron have any good goodies that he gave at the end of the filming?
Did you see Ghosted with Ana de Armas?
Yeah.
Do you remember the bus sequence? I have a bus backwards down a hill. Anyway, this is from that bus. I took
really?
this.
That's cool.
And then you probably recognize this.
What's that?
So in Avatar, it's the right. And so Cameron, he sent us this is one of the Christmas gifts. So it's a Christmas ornament wood sprite. But then my favorite memento from Avatar here. Hold on, stay right there. Hold on.
Yeah.
So these are so funny, but when we were working on Avatar, Jim would send us family Christmas cards.
Really? That's hilarious.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. So we got
that's cool.
James Cameron's family Christmas cards. So just again, you're working on the biggest movie, but amazing people. John Landau is everyone's dad. He's so cool. So yes, I have more. One of my favorite things to save. I love saving slates.
Oh, nice.
So this is actually the slate. Oh, wow, I can't believe I have this, but this is from Ghosted.
Oh, that's amazing, dude.
And then this was when we did Mortal Kombat.
That's awesome.
And then Water Unit, Avatar sequels. And then this one's pretty wild.
Oh my God, dude. That's really cool.
So, yeah, some really, really cool. And then this is a movie I shot for the Lifetime Network.
A Christmas Harmony. Nice. Lifetime, Vancouver. The other Vancouver. Is that where you went?
Lifetime. No, we shot that in Crested Butte, Colorado.
Okay.
But
I know Hallmark has a little headquarters. All the Vancouver people I've interviewed that moved back up there, that were in Hollywood for a little bit, that's their bread and butter, those Hallmark movies or Lifetime. It's a good place to film. That's cool. I gotta say, every time I ask that question, not saying the actors don't have good stuff. John Carpenter gave this guy Peter Jason, he's a great character actor. He has the best gifts, the end of films, usually leather jackets.
That's cool.
But no, there's one guy who's a Steven Poster, cinematographer. Okay, so his thing was he lived in John Carpenter's house. He bought John Carpenter's house that Carpenter owned when he directed The Fog. So the jacuzzi scene with Adrienne Barbeau is in that house in the movie. So he goes, cool. Doug, you want to see something really cool? And I go, yeah, because he worked on Blade Runner, and he runs over and he picks something up, and it was in a set piece. I forgot what scene it was. I think it's the first time when Harrison Ford meets Sean Young, like the first time he meets her, and in the back there's
Yep.
just like these random like metal pieces on the wall, and he holds it up, and I'm like, oh my god, it's so cool. He's like, yeah, they said we could take what we want at the end, so yeah, I grabbed that. I go, what do you do with it? And he goes, I use it as a doorstop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but it's like anytime I love tchotchkes. I love little things.
Oh,
Like,
dude. Ones that have stories, like this guy Ron Schmidt, last one. But Ron Schmidt, he worked on The Shield, and he took when Michael Chiklis, like I don't know what he folds up. I think he puts his number on, but he makes it into a paper airplane. And he throws like his card, like, and he goes, I picked it up and took it, and I have it on my thing. I'm like, that's like so cool.
so cool.
To somebody else is just trash that would have got picked up and thrown in the garbage, but it has like a memory.
Yeah. If when you're out here, if you ever come to LA, there's a fun thing that we can do. We can call and get a drive on to the Universal Studios prop house. And so you go there, and it's where you would actually go and like rent props. But they have, in a case, they have like some famous props that are kind of like meh. So like they have the mold for the fertility idol from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Really?
So like the idol that from the very first, like that was cast, like the mold is in there, and then they have like props from Jurassic Park, and they have the wooden ball from Minority Report that says John Anderton on it that rolls down the thing.
Yeah.
Like that little wooden ball is like in there. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
I love it, man. Yeah, it never gets old. It never gets old. It's always awesome. And
slates are cool. I've never seen anybody with slates. Whenever I ask that, nobody's ever had slates. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, because like and my favorite thing, what I like to do at the end of the film, I have everyone autograph the back too.
That's
awesome. This is for Mortal Kombat. So this says everyone I could get on my crew. Because that's the other thing too, is it's like, you always think like, well, actors are going to give autographs, but it's like, yeah, actors are cool. But like when I meet the craftspeople who worked on these great projects, when we were doing the commercial in Dallas, I was like, well, I'm going to hire the best there is. My audio mixer, Stacy Brownrigg, he was the audio mixer for Office Space and like cool. Idiocracy. And I was like, oh my God, dude. I'm like, you're a legend. You're so, fantastic. It's just so cool. You just like, you meet these people and they're the ones that like, they're the magic makers. It's like, you've got the ideators, the James Camerons of the world. And those people they are who they are. Like we know who these people are, but then there's the thousands of craftspeople. Yeah. Nia Koo, another gaffer. I'm probably maybe been butchering his name. I did this fashion commercial, and I got to hire him to be my gaffer. He was the gaffer for a badass film called Bone Tomahawk. Have you seen Bone Tomahawk?
Kurt Russell.
Yeah, man. And so it was like, and again, it's like a smaller, lesser known film, but like I'm a huge fan. And then he did Come On, Come On. Did you see that movie?
No.
Come On is so beautiful and makes me cry. With what's his name? Oh my goodness. With Walk the Line with Napoleon, that actor.
John Heder?
No. It's super famous. The bad guy from Gladiator. Why am I totally?
Oh, Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah. Joaquin Phoenix. Come on. Okay. And so Nia gaffed Come On. And so again, it's like smaller, lesser known film. But I'm like, dude, oh my God. And you meet these people, and that's when I get starstruck. You meet the craftspeople, the women who work. And so I have them autograph. If I ever have a chance to work with them, I have them autograph the slate. Because like awesome. To me, like those are the heroes, man. It's like you guys made. I know what it takes to work on these projects, and like you guys did it, and it's just so beautiful, such beautiful work.
I love that. Whenever I remember like one of the first interviews I did, it was a special effects guy, Tim Lawrence, worked on like every movie I love, Beetlejuice, like a million things, and he worked on Howard the Duck, and that's one of my favorite movies. And he had these really cool stories about, and he sent me after we were done. He sent me like an email with like 50, like attachment, 50 photos behind the scenes. Like he did that whole opening sequence when Howard's like flying through the walls. And
Yeah.
he did like the girl duck, like the naked nude girl duck in the bathtub, the vampire duck, and he did all those things. And to me, I'm like, God, it's like, I don't know, it's like the coolest thing. Like, I agree with you. Like, obviously, if I could meet James Cameron, it'd be awesome. But to like just talk the character actors I've talked to, I'm like, I've seen you in so much. Like, Tom Cruise is cool, but dude, Stuart Penkin, you're like the biggest vicious asshole boss in like film history. And it's like, it's neat because I think they appreciate that a lot too. Because I feel like they have that same thing. Like, maybe in their, not everyone, but in their minds, maybe like a lesser known film, but they like, it's fun, man. And it's cool that you do that because those people, it means a lot to you, but I'm sure to them it means a lot as well. Thanks, Nathan.
Super pleasure. Thank you so much, Doug.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, dude. We'll keep in touch for sure. We always go out there, so yeah, I'll definitely keep in touch with you. The James Cameron family Christmas card. Nathan gets that every year, which is pretty neat. But man, how wild is that? Just that him and his buddies, young, go see Blair Witch in the movie theater, and then 17 years later, he's doing the camera testing for the direct sequel to it. And then also the same connection when it comes to Avatar. Like, after he worked on the first one, he saw it in a Portland movie theater, flew back, visited some family, and then his name is in the credits for Way of Water, which is really cool. And man, some of the best mementos people ever have taken from set. I love the fact that he doesn't go for the stars. He gets the autographs on the back of the slates from all the other people that he worked with on set behind the camera, which I think is really cool and probably means so much to them. So Nathan, thank you. And best luck in the future. I know he talked about at the end, he was writing a feature, which, man, the guy, such passion, still so young. And it was so crazy to hear him say that. People told him, hey, if, when you're 50, you can, work camera on a movie theater, which I think if he wanted to, he could do that a lot faster than that, but he loves making his independent films and, being in charge and being able to actually be making the calls while on set. So your homework, Blair Witch 2016. I hope it's good. I love the original. Jamie obviously is a lot older than me, and I hope he's listening to this. He's a lot older than me. So when he saw the original Blair Witch Project, he knew that it wasn't real. But as a little kid at 13 years old, I thought it was real. I saw it that first night, and there was all that buzz about it because there was no internet to be like, hey, is this real? And wow, that messed me up for a little bit. Really good movie. So I'm hoping the direct sequel brings back some of those memories for me. So don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget to check our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.
Good night, guys.